Hello everyone, welcome back. We are actually gonna conduct our chapter 7 and chapter 8 theories, which is chapter 7 is implementing strategies, management operation issues, and chapter 8 is actually implementing strategies in relation to marketing, finance, accounting, and R&D, which is research and development. Now, I would like you to be aware of this statement. It states, successful strategy formulation does not guarantee a successful strategy implementation. Now, this is a very important statement that we're making here. You may have one of the best strategy formulation that you've actually conducted using the right metrics, the right data. However, when you're actually implementing that particular strategy into your own organization, it may fail. It may fail. And there's a lot of factors that contributes for that being failing. And we're going to discuss some of those factors in chapter 7 and chapter 8. Now, strategy implementation is a lot more difficult than actually making the strategy. When you're doing something and actually writing something, they're two different things. I was talking to one of the structural engineers, and he says it's actually much easier when you design something on paper in comparison to constructing something in real life. Same method. You can say something, but really doing it takes a completely different ballgame. I'll give you some examples here. In slide number 6, we have your strategy formulation, your positioning forces before the action. This is when actually you're making the strategy yourself. However, when you're implementing the strategy, managing forces during the action is a lot harder. So one is actually you're positioning the forces. Implementation, you're managing forces. And it takes a lot of effort, a lot of leadership skills to manage people. When you're making a strategy, you actually focus on effectiveness. However, when you're implementing the strategy, you focus on efficiency, which again, a lot harder. Now, the next one actually requires a good initiative and analytical skills, where when you're implementing, it requires a lot of motivation and leadership skills. When you're actually making the strategy, it requires coordination among just a few individuals. However, when you're implementing the strategy, it requires coordination among many individuals. So you can see that it takes a lot more effort in implementing in comparison to formulating the strategy yourself. A very important statement here says managers and employees motivated more by self-interest rather than organizational interest. Now, this is a very important statement. Sometimes employees or managers tend to be a little bit more selfish, and it's all about me and I and myself, rather than what is the major benefit for that organization. So, if that is the culture of that particular organization, you need to have a strategy and system, incentives for those employees and managers to ensure they actually work and try to implement that new strategy. Now, in slide number 8, it talks about there's 5 stages. You need to establish annual objectives. devising policies, allocating resources, alerting existing organization structure, and restructuring and or even re-engineering the structure of that organization to ensure that implementation takes place. You also may require to revise and reward employees by incentives programs. You may also minimize resistance to change by let these employees understand what is the purpose of change. Managing the natural environment, which is the culture. Developing a strategy supporting the culture of the organization, and adapting production operation process. Okay. Now, the HR department has a major role in this, especially when it's working with these stakeholders, and a strategy that to ensure the implementation actually can work is you may actually have to downsize or change new blood, having new employees, if you're getting an enormous amount of resistance from your existing stakeholders. Because a lot of the stakeholders, a lot of employees don't like change, even though change could be better for the business, for them individually, because without the business being successful, they won't have a job. But unfortunately, as humans, we tend to think about ourselves, and therefore we'll lose the big picture. And sometimes you need to make hard decisions that you may have to replace these individuals or these groups of the organization with new blood, and making sure that everybody able to support that change and able to implement the new strategy. And that could be with anything, using a brand new software, using a new machinery, using a new process, using a new system, manufacturing a brand new product. All these are change that employees don't like to change, so they're not used to. By establishing an annual objectives, this is your first step. And this is basis for allocating resources. It's a mechanism for evaluating managers. It's a process to monitor progress towards long-term objectives. And it's actually established organizational, divisional, and departmental priorities. Now, in relation to devising policies, with devising the policies itself, you need to set boundaries and you need to set expectations for your employees to making sure they cooperate and able to implement that new strategy for the benefit for the organization. Now, the next process that you need to be aware of with implementation is actually allocating the right resources. Do you have the right employees? Are they competent in their new roles? Do you have enough finance to budget? Do you have enough technology or the softwares or the latest technology that it's out there that you can actually use to be efficient and productive? Now, altering existing organization structure is never easy. And what you actually require is to determine the weaknesses of each department. And before you do that, you gotta make sure you have a detailed strategy. How you're gonna alter this organization structure, either from a culture change, or from operation change, or from a HR change, or even from a finance change. And this is very, very important strategy that senior managers or the BOD need to think about very carefully, because it may have also negative consequences behind that. Restructuring organization is a very common, especially worldwide, where you might have to actually downsize. You may actually decide, rather than actually have full-time employees, we're going to say we're going to have more freelancers, we're going to have more subcontractors, and you may use that strategy to cut your overheads rather than paying visa fees and insurance fees and schooling fees and home fees. You're cutting all those benefits. So that's one way of actually restructuring. What you can also do to restructure is actually benchmark against competitors and seeing, do you actually have the same skills, same product, the same services as your successful competitor. Okay. And the main also process of actually restructuring is making sure is that the main benefit for a cost reduction and obviously a higher profit. And that's the whole point of actually restructuring. You want to make sure the cost itself has been reduced, either from operations or from human resources or from wastage, and making sure that the cost itself has been reduced, and obviously now profit has increased. Now, reengineering itself is a very important tactic, and that may relate back to redesigning how that product is actually made. You might use a different strategy, a different machine, even actually delivering your product, or having these employees working, rather than actually having a work shift, might have a strategy where you can actually have a casual person, as an example. The main thing that when you actually do re-engineer an organization, you got to actually consider the cost, quality, service, and speed. Now those factors are very important, because again, when you're re-engineering a process or the organization itself, you are making sure that the quality of the product has not reduced, the cost of the product has not increased, your own costing of your organization from overhead has not increased, the service is even better than what it was, and the speed, for example, to finish the product or to deliver that product is even quicker. Now, to achieve that is that you really need to work with the employees. You need to have that strong bond. You need to really show your leadership skills here. This is where it comes back to. Now, you can actually do this in a number of ways, where you can have formal and informal meetings. You can have incentive strategies with your employees. You can have what we call a recognition factor, employee of the year, employee of the month, employee of the week. And I've actually even worked with organizations where I was given the opportunities to actually share some of the profits, which made me even work harder. So as if I was actually one of the owners. So when you're actually an employee and you're given shares of the company, okay, so whatever the earning of the company is, you get some of that shares. That also is actually an incentive as well. And that makes you, as an employee, work harder, want to achieve the best interest for that organization, and therefore you're not going to slack off. You're not going to just slack off. Very important also part in dealing with employees is actually managing resistance to change. Now, resistance to change, you're going to get that, doesn't matter which organization you're in. But the resistance might differ from one organization to the other. That barrier could be so thick that you can't break through. And what you need to do is that you need to have a strategy in place with these stakeholders on how you can manage to manage that resistance of change. Now, a lot of employees have a lot of fear of change. They may think that they're going to lose their jobs. They may think that they're too slow, they can't do the job anymore. So what you also need to be aware of, one of the amazing strategies that I actually use personally is actually providing support by training and education. And ensure that you as senior manager, as a leader, you have that mental relationship between you and employees. Give them support, coach them. The next one is actually managing the natural environment. This is very important in relation to the legal requirement from the environmental requirement as well, in relation to what's required from you as an organisation to ensure that you comply with the laws for the environment itself. So you may, for example, have a lot of wastage. You might have a lot of water management that you need to conduct part of your as a byproduct. So what were you going to do? How are you going to manage that? So making sure that you have a strategy and a system in place. So this is basically managing the natural environment itself. Now, the next thing that you need to be aware of is basically creating a strategy to support the culture. So the culture of the organization, if it's actually a strong culture, support the culture, but having a strategy also to making sure that the implementation will be implemented by these employees. Production and operation concerns. Now, this is actually a decision on plant size, quality control, cost control, and technology. Now, this is very important, is that how could I making sure that my production and my operation systems is efficient? Now, this goes through the assessments and making sure they are actually active. Same thing with your human resources, making sure that the contract's in place, making sure that the employees are fully aware of their rights, their obligation, and making sure they understand the policies and procedures that they need to adhere to. Now, a lot of employees, when they say, or when you mention the words strategy implementation, they immediately get the word, here we go, there's more change coming out of the way. So, and as we all know that people don't like change. So, a couple of things to consider when you're dealing with change, if that implementation does require change, is that you need to provide support from yourself personally and from your own team, making sure there's discipline, motivation, hard work, and most importantly, team effort, which is very important. You need to support team effort and encourage team effort. Another statement on slide number 23 states here, less than 10% of strategies formulated are successfully implemented. Wow. Some of the reasons for this low success rate is because failing to segment market appropriately, paying too much for new acquisition, falling behind competition, and obviously because you're not conducting R&D, not recognizing the benefits of computers, technology, and managing information. Now, there's two variables when it comes to strategy implementation. One is market segmentation, and the other one which is product positioning, which we spoke about in our previous chapters. Now, some decisions that actually may require policies. Okay. So, what you need to consider in slide number 26, be a price leader or a price follower. Use heavy, light, or no TV advertisement, so the channel of your media. Maybe offer a complete or limited warranty, or may offer actually a salesperson's reward structure. So what we're saying here from a marketing perspective is that how are we going to actually market our product, and how are we going to encourage and get the exposure from our branding. Again, market segmentation, which is very, very important and particularly useful in small and specialized firms. With market segmentation, it's based on geographic variables, demographic variables, psychological variables, and behavioral variables. So these are the four variables that you need to be based on when you're going through your market segmentation. Now, in relation to strategy implementation, it's also important that you actually have the financial budget in place, the financials in place, and the business valuation process is in place. Now, in relation to your capital acquisition, it's very important that you have the source of the capital, which is the net profit of the operation, the sales of assets, debit, and equity. These needs to be established and determined, so that making sure that you may be not able to pay off the wages or the bills that you need to pay for. Therefore, financial budgets, cash flow budgets needs to be conducted, and making sure that you follow those and adhere those. From a business evaluation, the main approach is what the firm owns, what the firm earns, and what a firm will bring to the market. This is actually in relation to the three approaches with business evaluation. Now, in relation to your research and development, again, I do emphasize the emphasis on conducting a detailed research and development and making sure that a competent person is actually conducting the R&D, enough budget for the R&D, and data that was actually established for an R&D to be dissected, analyzed, and to be used part of your SWOT analysis. Now, these are very important part of your R&D. Now, I hope this has actually helped. This is actually, now we completed chapter 7 and 8. And we're going to go through our last chapter after this, which is chapter 9. And then I'm going to go through a bit of a brief about the assessments as well. Thank you very much.